Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Club Fitting Chronicles. My name is Josh. So good to be back. It's been so long. Gene, it's good to see you. How are you?
I am doing better. Last week we were supposed to record, but I decided to celebrate Christmas with COVID again. Not nearly as bad as I had it last year when my wife called the paramedics on me and I lost almost 30 pounds. But I still have no taste. Some people say I've always been tasteless. And I have no smell, but other people say, no, you smell a lot. But besides that, I'm finally, hopefully I won't get into a little coughing spurt. But that's what I was going through last week is I would start talking and I would start coughing. So
right.
I'm glad we're able to do it this week.
Well, I'm glad that you're back and healthy. I'm glad to be back once again. It's been a while. And I just wanted to thank all of our downloaders and subscribers. And we'd love if you give us a rating on whichever platform you use to listen to us on, whether that's Apple Music or Spotify. We would really appreciate you rating us. Now, Gene, if you could get into today's topic, we're talking about shaft bend profiles and shaft asymmetry. Could you give us a little more information about that?
Sure. So what we're going to talk about is a lot of people think a regular or a stiff is a stiff is a stiff. And we're going to talk about the different places where stiffness is measured when you're looking at a bend profile. And hopefully there'll be some graphics that people can look at. I tried playing around a little bit, and I'm not the most techie person. Sometimes when I try to use the toaster to listen to the radio, it doesn't work very well. And so hopefully our Adam is going to be able to get this information in front of us, but I'll talk about it and give a little bit of detail so it will make some sense. And then asymmetry, we're going to be talking about him. I shot a video, and hopefully he'll be able to download it and put it in place. Asymmetry of shafts. Shafts are not perfectly round, perfectly straight. We think they are, and the USGA says that they're supposed to be, but they're not. And we're going to talk about what can that cause and what can you do about it. And so those are the big topics for today. One of the things I want to talk a little bit about, and I've been muddying this up for the last couple of weeks. It's been hard to talk for 30 minutes just looking at me talking to me. And sometimes I lose my train of thought getting older. I want to talk a little bit about the weight of the shaft and what a player needs to have in order to play at their best. And I had a perfect example of it the other day. I was playing out at Las Colinas, and this guy was probably in his early 40s, big guy, probably 6'3", 6'4", 240 pounds, pick me up and flick me around, without any trouble. And he had been, quote, fit at a establishment, buying clubs from a direct tip from the company, being fit. And his shaft weight, first of all, it was obvious watching his swing. He struggled with tempo. He struggled with finding the golf ball at times. When he was going, like if he was going to hit a 6-iron or 7-iron, that's when the struggles started to begin. When he would hit a very tempoed short shot, something 90, 100 yards, he was probably about 70% on that. But his swing looked much better than what his results were. And we started talking, and I looked at his shafts, and he was playing with shafts about 5 grams heavier than mine. Now, again, I am probably 5'9.5", 200 pounds, and I'm 65. And this other guy swinging, he hit a couple of tee shots we were playing on number 1. He had, I think he had 201 into the green after his tee shot. So he could hit the ball a long way. And they were just way too light. And finally, because I hadn't been paying much attention to it, we hadn't been talking much until we got to the back 9. We got to 17, and he tried hitting his iron and probably took about a divot 6 inches behind the ball, which was very common for him that day. It's either he thinned it or he took a huge divot. And I said, let me see your club. And I felt the head weight and the swing weight was probably around D1. And it was really lightweight. And I gave him my club. And I said, this is not right, but this is at least head heavier. Try hitting this. And he took one swing and he looked at me and he stuck it about 6 feet from the hole. And he was like, I could feel the golf club. And he was a prime candidate. He probably needs something in the 110 to 120 gram range for shaft weight. He needs more swing weight. Somebody like yourself, Josh, you're thin, you're young, you have an aggressive swing, but you're not super, big.
Sure.
You're probably in that, your shafts are probably around the 110 gram range, which is adequate for your swing speed. Again, my club head speed, I'm not nearly as fast as you. My shaft weight is 85, 90 grams. And it's, again, I need enough weight to slow me down because my big issue is tempo. Mm-hmm. So the shaft itself is going to help to dictate tempo when it's too light. I can hit a 60 gram iron shaft, but I can't do it consistently because tempo becomes an issue.
Right.
I can swing a 110 gram shaft. It's wonderful for tempo, but it gets a little heavy after a while, and I don't move it quite as quick, so I lose distance. So it's blending in your physical strength. It's blending in your needs as far as tempo. If you're really quick back and forth, you need something to help you to feel the golf club. And then it's also going to, the dictator as far as does it need to be tip stiff or tip soft is going to be how well can you hold the angle. So those are the things that you're looking for when you're looking at the weight of a shaft. You're looking at the physical strength of the person. You're looking at their physical needs as far as can they control tempo? Can they find the ground repeatedly? When the club head is too light, you get going too quick. If you pull yourself out of your swing, it's hard to stay down and through the shot. Is the head weight enough to help you to find the ground repeatedly? To be able to pinch get the club head hitting the ball and then hitting into the turf. If it's too light, you're not going to be able to do it. You're going to pull back out of the shot, generally speaking. If it's too heavy, again, you'll usually see people collapsing in the back as they're coming back to the ball, and they'll hit a number of fat shots because it's just a little bit too much weight. It's too hard to hold the angle, so you early release. So that was the thing I wanted to clear up a little bit. I changed my driver shaft recently. I went back to a 65 gram shaft from a 55 gram shaft. And it was more because I just found myself getting a little too quick in my transition. It's just, I love it when it's working. But when I start losing that tempo, I can't get it back. It's just too light. And I make my swing weight on my driver's 44 1/4 inches long, and the swing weight's D3. So there's enough head feel, but it's just not enough total weight of the golf club to help me. And since I went back to the 65 gram shaft, I'm still not happy with my swing. I'm still trying to overswing at times, but I'm hitting 13 out of 14 fairways. And so I'm making it work, and it's simply because I can feel what I'm doing a little bit better. And it's helping me not get too quick in my transition. So with that, let's talk about shaft bend profiles. And I did some research, and it would look really, really cool if you could see it right now. Maybe Adam can flip the screen when I show this, but this is all the numbers that I was gathering. And I've just picked out some random shafts. I said, I'm going to pick out a Mitsubishi, and I picked out the Mitsubishi Becerra shaft, a 43-gram shaft, R-Flex. And I said, okay, in my shaft profile system, what is that considered? And they rate it as something for somebody swinging 60 to 70 miles an hour. Okay, it's labeled an R. But it's the way the bend profile, it doesn't get very stiff. You know, at the butt end, it's 158 cycles at 41 inches. And at the tip end, it's 755 cycles at 11 inches. And what you do to determine a bend profile is every 5 inches, starting at 41 inches, going down to 11, there's something called a frequency analyzer. And you have a clamp, and it clamps down on it so that it holds the shaft tight to the machine. You put a weight on it, on the tip, and the official word is twang it. You make the weight bounce up and down so the weight is going like this. And as we're bouncing up and down, we're looking at, and it's counting how many times does it do that. And when it's counting how many times that it bounces, it's saying it bounces 158 times in a minute. Excuse me. When it's down at the 11-inch mark, it's bouncing at 755 times. Then I got a UST shaft, the Lin Q Purple. And that's labeled a regular. And it's for somebody swinging 90 to 100 miles an hour. So the top end of that shaft versus the bottom end of the other shaft is only a difference of 40 miles an hour. Both of them are still labeled regular. You know, the tip end is now bouncing at 779 cycles. So that's roughly 34 cycles more than the first shaft. 34 cycles more is about one stiffness stiffer in the tip, but on the other end, at 41 inches, it's 20 cycles stiffer. 20 cycles is like 2 flexes stiffer, but it's still labeled an R. So which R are you looking for? Then I found some more. UST has a ProForce V2, and their ProForce V2, 60-gram R shaft. It cycles at 177. It's rated at 90 to 100 miles an hour, and the tip is rated at 842 cycles. So the difference between the first shaft and that shaft is 5 flexes stiffer in the tip. It's still labeled a regular, but they're completely different regulars. The first regular would be for that guy you can picture. He's about 78, 79 years old. He's playing at the forward tees, and he has a very smooth backswing and a very smooth follow-through. Perfect shaft for him. You give that shaft to the guy swinging at, say, 80, 85 miles an hour, but going after it and holding the angle. He might not be able to get as much speed as he used to. Put him at that shaft in his hands, and it's going to feel like the tip is going everywhere. So same label, totally different experience. You know, I pulled up 9 different shafts, and I have a range of 158 cycles to 177 cycles in the butt end of the shaft. Again, that's 2 flexes. On the tip end at 11 inches, it's 755 to 842. In that end, every 30 to 35 cycles is a stiffness. So the hard part for golfers is when you're talking about a regular, well, what kind of regular do you mean? And that's where, when we were talking about the weight of the shaft, this is the defining feature for most golfers. The more aggressive, the stiffer the tip needs to be. The less aggressive, the softer the tip needs to be. It will just feel better. Most golfers think that stiffer tip or the softer tip is going to way launch the ball or way keep the ball down. All the shaft can do is bend far enough to line up with the center of gravity of the head. So if I have my driver head and the center of gravity is back here and my shaft, kind of goes in, but the center of gravity sits back about a half an inch to 3/4 of an inch off of the face, it can only move that far forward. It can only add up to about 2.5 degrees of launch. But it will feel squirrely, or it'll feel like it's a piece of rebar. And those will change what golfers do. When it feels way too stiff, you're going to swing out of your shoes trying to make it feel better. And chances are you're going to come over the top. Chances are you're going to do all kinds of other mean, nasty things, and that's going to result in a poor shot. On the other hand, like the shaft that you were talking about, the guy up at Mountain Brook has, you put that in one of your clubs, you're going to be lifting your left leg up thinking it's going to hit. I'm going to hook one so bad that it'll hit my foot right off the tee, because that shaft just feels like it's doing all kinds. It can't do that much. It really only can bend, this far. When I talk to guys who design shafts, and I would say, they would make a low launch and a high launch shaft. And I said, if all things were perfect, how much higher will the high launch shaft launch than the low launch shaft? And they always come up with the same thing, about 2.5 degrees. But it's a feel difference. The stiffer that tip is, the more stable it feels. The softer that tip is, the more out of control it feels. And it depends on your swing. The more aggressive you are, the more the tip stiffness feels good.
So the shaft doesn't bend like a noodle? That's not a real thing?
Nope. If you get, my favorite would be is when people would bring in their cell phone photographs of their shaft, and it was like, it looks like this as it's coming to the ball. Right. And I have to explain to them, if you had $100,000 high-speed camera, it wouldn't look like that. Your camera is taking a frame, every couple of hundredths of a second. And so it's missing all those other parts, and it makes the shaft look like it's doing bizarre things. It can't do that. It just, the frames per second aren't enough for it. When you're swinging at a distance from the top of your swing to the bottom of your swing, and it's getting there in under, say, 0.4 of a second, 0.3 of a second, from the moment it gets to the top to all the way to the bottom, and it's going at 110 miles an hour, there's a lot of frames that aren't being caught. So the big thing with bend profile is you need to know what bend profile fits me the best. Somebody like you make a good move at the ball, you hold the angle, but you don't come unglued. Something really tip stiff would probably not feel so good. But something tip soft would not feel so good. You're probably somewhere, mid to mid-low launch type shaft. That's how they're designed, or how they refer to them as, high launch, mid-launch, low launch. You're probably a mid-low type stiffness, as long as the butt end is stiff enough for you, because that's the other part of the equation. You don't give somebody like yourself an R flex with a stiff tip. It won't feel good, because that R flex is not strong enough, and it's going to feel like your hand, everything between you and the head is moving around. So hopefully we can get the graphics up on the video or the page that I'd like to show people, because these 10 shafts range from 60 miles an hour to 100 miles an hour. I have a couple in the 70 mile an hour range. A couple of them are 75 to 90 mile an hour. Couple of 70 to 80 mile an hour ranges, but they're all labeled the same, R. And they're all, except for the first one, from the same company. So all of them are UST shafts. In fact, 3/4 of them are part of the Pro 4 series. But even being out of the same series, the same shaft family, they're all within, they range from 60 to 75 grams. They're all driver shafts, and they're all different. And that's what makes it a little bit more challenging. But again, once you understand what kind of shaft that person needs, it kind of eliminates some of the mystery in picking a shaft. And that's basically bend profile. And again, I encourage people, if there's a shaft you're curious about, I have a profile system with about 3,300 shafts in it. Say, Gene, what is the profile of this? And if I can find it in the system, I will send you an email with the bend profile. If it's something you like, if you want to know, are there other shafts out there like that? I will be happy to send, here are some other suggestions that are similar. Like the driver shaft I'm using now cost me $40. And why am I using a $40 shaft? Because I went through the bend profile system. I said, well, okay, what shafts have I liked in the past that are in the 65 gram weight range? And this one popped up, and I go, I'll try it. And first swing was right down the middle, and I loved it. And then I started trying to hit it too hard again. But probably part of it too was it was like 48 degrees, and I think I had 8 layers of clothing on, and
sure.
I couldn't swing and started feeling like I gotta come out of my shoes to get this thing to go. And so that's shaft bend profile. Questions about profile? The hard thing is but they don't give you that information.
It's interesting because you say the profile, they only bend to a certain degree, but like I brought up earlier, I mean, the feel difference is unreal. I mean, you're taking you take a shaft from like a kids club, okay, and you feel it, and it just feels. I mean, it feels like it's bending like a noodle. I mean, it's like,
well, a kids club probably does, but an adult club.
Right, but there is some senior flex shafts that do bend like feel the same way. They do feel like they bend a lot, but if that's the case, in which they only bend to a certain degree, most of them, and if the feel is that different, I mean that's crazy. It's crazy.
Yeah. The laws of physics kind of take over there. The center of gravity of the shaft can line up with the center of gravity of the head. Is it if it were possible, some people, we talked about it's not like a whip, because at the top of your swing, the label is down, and when you come back through, the label is up, but it's not bending in that up plane, because you wouldn't want it to bend in that up plane, because now it's coming at you. Or actually it would be a down plane. It would be kicking at you. You don't want to play golf with a club that whips at you.
Right.
It starts off, you got it at 6 o'clock or 12 o'clock. You bring it to the top of your swing. That same spot is now pointing down. When you come back through, the 9 o'clock part of the shaft is now facing the target. So you didn't load anything because you didn't have it in the 3 o'clock position at the top of the swing. It's totally different position. So
you talked about shaft asymmetry.
Right.
What is that? What is shaft asymmetry?
So a shaft, again, it's not perfectly round, perfectly straight. So there's places in that depending on the shaft, depending on how it was designed, depending on how it was made. Some shaft companies will say, no, they bend the same no matter what. Other shaft companies they'll go through a process, and before they even put the label on the shaft, they're painted, they're painting. They will find the spot where the shaft is most steady, and they will locate all the graphics based on that point, so that the shaft is actually going to be as stable as can be. In the video, hopefully, that you'll see, I put a weight on a shaft. I have a clamp. It's not as good as what I would do at the shop, but it worked for here. You twang the shaft, and I have a laser pointer. And the laser pointer, when it's in a good plane, when it's in a position of repeating, the point will go straight up and straight down. When it's out of that plane, like if I took that same shaft that was doing this and I rotated it, say 35, 40 degrees, it might now be doing this and going back and forth at an angle. Well, basically what that's showing me is under load, that's the path that shaft wants to take. So maybe the club face is going from a little bit from the outside to the inside. That's the path that the shaft is going to take. Okay, we're going to try one more little video here. Found a position where the shaft seems to be oscillating in a pretty good position. Not a whole lot of movement of that tip. But if I just turn the shaft, and forgive me for getting you off camera while I do that. Now I've turned the shaft and we see that it's oscillating a little differently. Kind of going up left and bottom right. Now it's kind of turning around. Let's give it another twang. And again, it starts off, it's kind of oscillating. It's oscillating a little bit more. Now this clamp isn't as good as what we would need really to do this, but this gives you an idea of what I'm looking at when I'm looking at the vibration plane of the shaft. Does this thing repeat? Does it want to go, in my case, straight up and down? Now, when I first started building golf clubs many, 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 many years ago, I discovered this, and then I happened to go to a conference where a man named Dick Weiss had built a high-tech computer machine that would put the shaft under load in 360 degrees. It would rotate the shaft, and it would find the stablest position to locate that shaft. And then basically you would put that stable position, they would be marked, and you would put it with the label of the marking at 12 o'clock. Well, I had this shaft and I was trying to build a driver, and I was wanting to find out what the flex was. So I clamped it in my thing and I twanged it, because that's how you get the measurement for the stiffness. And the shaft, it's 47 inches long. The shaft started vibrating so violently and so crazily. It was doing figure eights. It was going like, then it would go this, and then it'd go back, and then it was going this, and then it'd go figure eight. And it was vibrating so violently, it started to wiggle my bench that weighed about 200 pounds with this 200-gram weight on the end of it. Well, I'm looking at the number, and I couldn't even get it to count how many times it went up and down, because it didn't go up and down. It was going figure eight. It was going sideways. It was doing everything. So I rotated it, and I finally found a place where I could get a number. Okay, and it was kind of going like this. It gave me a number. I rotated it again, and now it's going like this. And it would give me a number, but it was one flex difference. This is the same shaft. You know, it's giving me 10 cycles difference just because I rotated. And then by accident, I found a place where it went straight up and down. And I was like, that is interesting. Why is that happening? Then I went to this conference and learned about this and bought a shaft that had been, it's called puring, to find that stable position, bought a shaft, put it in my machine, and tried to figure out, how do I find that spot? I covered all the markings so that I couldn't see it. So I wasn't going to be led to it because I could see it. And I found a way that I could find that spot. And then I would take it out and roll it around and, cover it with tape, so I couldn't see the marking again, and do it again. And I would find that same spot. Well, I had made a 3-wood. And this 3-wood was absolutely, I loved the look of it. I loved the feel of it. I loved everything about it until the first time I tried to hit it. Now, Josh, we have played golf many times before. How often do you see me slice a ball 50, 60 yards?
Usually your miss is a hook. So that was, that's pretty uncommon.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm playing with a friend of mine. We're going to play 150 holes of golf in 2 days in Palm Springs. And the second hole is a par 5. I get this 3-wood out. I am so excited. I cannot wait to hit this thing. And I hit this 50-yard high flaring slice. Well, that's odd. When I probably did that 5 years ago. I hit one of those. So, okay, whatever. I was too excited. We get a couple holes later, another par 5, another perfect, lie, perfect chance to hit that. And it was like a repeat. I hit it, it was probably 220 yards and about 60 yards right. Every other club I have hit today has gone dead square straight or a slight draw. I pulled that thing out like 9 times, and 9 times I saw a similar pattern. Way off to the right. Like, this doesn't make sense. So I went back to my shop and I put face tape on the face and I hit 20 shots with it. And I could not find the center of the face. In 20 shots, I did not hit the center once. Took the head off the shaft, put it in my, clamped it down, found the vibration plane, and it was going like, it was nuts. Rotated where I could get it to go straight up and down, located the shaft in it, used 5-minute epoxy because I wasn't going to wait. I wanted to test this. Put tape on the face, didn't take a practice swing, walked up, first swing, dead square center. Hit 19 out of 20 on center.
Jeez.
The grip was off to the side because I didn't bother to re-grip it. I didn't change the grip. I didn't change the swing weight. I didn't change anything other than the location that the shaft was in the head. It went from I couldn't hit it and keep it on the planet to I couldn't miss it. And all I did was rotate the shaft. So at that point, I started saying, this matters. I would have golfers from the Golf Academy of America, and I built like 7 or 8 irons, and I had the vibration plane in a different spot on each of them. Some of them intentionally bad, and some of them intentionally not so bad, and then perfect as far as what I was thinking. And I had probably 40 guys come in, and they would hit 5 shots with each club. And I would give it to them in totally random order. They had no idea why I was doing it. And in every case, you could see a change in ball striking. Better golfers, everything hit a dime. You could put a dime in the center of the face, and every point of contact was within, touch the dime. And then you give them the one that was way off. You could put a silver dollar in the middle of the face, and maybe 1 or 2 of them would miss the silver dollar. Now, this same guy was hitting the dime. All we've changed is the shaft. It was the exact same shaft. It was the exact same head. It was the exact same swing weight. It was simply the location of the profile of that bend, of where that shaft wanted to bend. Rules of golf say you cannot put it in a position that is other than neutral, meaning I can't use it to make it slice. I can't use it to make it hook. But I can put it where it's most stable. And so if you've ever had, for our listeners, if you ever have had especially a graphite, but it still is true with steel, a club that you literally, why can't I hit my 7-iron? Now, it could be like early on, I shared with, my swing weight was way off on one. That was why I couldn't hit the 9-iron. But on a lot of people's clubs, they'll come in with, I can't hit the 8-iron. And we'd measure it, and the swing weight was the same, and it wasn't a change of anything else. It was simply the planar oscillation plane of the shaft was different, and it was moving in a direction that was contrary to where the golfer wanted it to be. And it was enough that it was offsetting his ability to hit the ball and make good contact. Today, it's not quite as big of an issue because there are more companies pay attention to that, but there's still, you can run into shafts that are just, people can't hit them. And it has to do with the fact that they're not perfectly round, perfectly straight, so they're not bending the way you would think they would bend. And so that delivers the head maybe slightly opened or slightly closed. And that's all the difference in the world. And that's what asymmetry is about. And, realistically, you can't, the only way to test it is you have to pull the head. You can look at it with it, clamp it with the grip on and twang it and kind of get, if it's going like this, you got a problem. But it's hard sometimes because of the weight of the head, because you're not putting as much force on it going bing, as you do when you're swinging it. But you can, that asymmetry can cause all kinds of problems for a golfer. I even do it when I put my putter shaft in. I test for it. I'm going to take everything out of the equation. I don't want to have the putter shaft kind of just wanting to oscillate in a little different position. I want to come back square to the ball. So have you ever had a club that you literally can't hit that other than that 6-iron we fixed? Or one that just gives you more trouble than any other club?
I want to test out my driver because, and it's interesting you bring that up, because the degree of loft is, I could change the degree of loft, right? I have the shaft where I could switch it on my head. Right. And there's a different
settings. And as soon as you do that, you're changing you got it in a different plane. Right. Because you've rotated the shaft, so it's yep.
Right. So I wanna go back and test that out now. And it makes sense. It makes a lot of sense. And I think that could be the issue. It could. It honestly could, because I feel like I hit it dead center, and I do. There are moments where I could see where I hit a dead center and it's just straight block, or it's crazy.
The thing to do is put it back in its original position. Put some, get a piece of tape or get a dry erase marker pen, put a little dot on the back of the ball and hit driver with it and see where's the face, where am I hitting it on the face, and then rotate the shaft to another position. What happens? Am I as repeatable when it was in this position as it was in this position?
Right. That'd make complete sense. Wow. So as far as earlier questions go, the questions that I had, you answered about the hard and soft weight in the tip of a shaft, which I found was interesting, and just how detrimental it is to the golf club. I never really thought about it as much, but you also talk about the asymmetry of the shaft, and I want to test it out now. I really do. I want to get every single club, and if I had the time, I would take all the shafts out of my clubs, and I would test that. It's crazy to see it. You would look straight down at a shaft and you say, hey, this is perfectly straight, which some may be, but
yeah, it just costs too much to do it. I mean, that's why they don't do it. The cost of shafts would double.
Wow.
And even with steel, steel, generally speaking, isn't quite as bad, but I've found some bad steel shafts too. But every club I ever built, I've just built a set of irons for a high school kid, and if you look down at the shafts, everyone's in a little different position. And it's simply because we're looking for where's it's the most stable. I'm going to take the shaft-induced miss out of play.
Wow.
game's hard enough.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, you think of all these little factors that go into a club itself, and it makes you question things, especially these manufacturers who tell you all these things to the public, general public.
Right. And there's no way in the world that they can test for this. You know, me as an independent club builder, you know, if you go to ADS Golf, Scott's going to check that every single iron, every single wood. You know, if you look in my bag and you look at where's the labeling, you would notice immediately the labeling is not always in the same position. And that's because they're not all the same. They're all a little different. And so it's finding that stability, because I want to take that out of the equation. I can live with Gene makes a bad swing. I can't live with Gene can't make a good swing because the shaft won't let him.
Well, now I have another excuse to throw in there whenever I'm hitting the ball bad.
Exactly.
Oh, this shaft.
Exactly. And I would encourage all of you, just use that asymmetry. I can't believe it.
Yeah.
You know,
the freaking asymmetry's off on this club. That's why I hit it 30 yards right, which it could be.
Exactly.
It could be a valid excuse.
Yeah, and the big thing, the big thing is usually it stands out as, you know, I always hit this one different. That's a lead indicator. You know, now if all of them are really bad, then it's hard to tell because it all depends on what direction they're going. And you could have one club that, you know, face is coming in slightly open, and you could have another club face coming in slightly closed, and you kind of don't mind it hooking, but you hate it slicing. Well, the reason it's hooking is because of the asymmetry also. And a lot of times it just doesn't feel quite as solid.
Right.
You know, when it's in its proper bend position, everything, it's going towards the hole, it's doing everything it wants to do that you want it to do.
So one question I have now, when you add weight to a shaft, does that affect...
Makes it play a little softer.
Okay.
Yeah, you have to add a lot of weight to make it significant. But yeah, if you're adding swing weight, it's going to vibrate. You know, it takes a little longer for it to get to the bottom of that pass when it's counting, and so it's gonna register that it's a little softer.
Gotcha. Perfect. Well, that's all the questions I have today. I think that's going to be the end of the episode, guys. Thank you for listening. And once again, if you guys have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to our email, comment on our YouTube, and please rate us on whatever you listen to, whether that's YouTube, Apple Music, or Spotify. We would greatly appreciate it. And to our viewers that are outside of the United States, thank you for listening as always.
Exactly. Thank you. And again, I answered 10 emails this last week, so I'm not afraid to answer them if you send them.
Nice. Very nice.
Take care, Josh. Good seeing you.
Take care. Happy New Year, everybody.